That's all the stars, all the planets. 2 to the 256 is bigger than that.
Holy shit.
And so like to put it simply, to break a 256-bit seed phrase, you are going to pick an atom in all the universe. Any star, you can pick one little atom in there and you go, that one's mine.
History does not repeat itself, but it does often rhyme. And, I was doing podcasts for Bitcoin Magazine. Literally, we were streaming live in the middle of the FTX debacle. Dylan LeClaire was live tweeting, and we were just pulling up his tweets in real time of like all of the unwind of the FTT token. And then we just watched this entire exchange collapse. And I wasn't around during Mt. Gox, but like we've seen these larger institutions collapse. And I take for granted, and I think many Bitcoiners who came in the later stages of Bitcoin, the last like 5, 7, 8 years even, like we take for granted a lot of the hardware and software that has been built on the backs of the cypherpunks who were here 10, 12 years ago. Like I remember Hodl telling me like, dude, Q, you need to understand, like I used to have to like code and build my own wallet in a laptop and then like would mess it up and would lose a chunk of Bitcoin because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. You have it so easy. Again, it concerns me on the one hand that now self-custody does have a little bit of a stain on it.
Yeah, it's going to take I think it's going to take a decade to get over this. I think this will ring loudly. Yeah, especially the thing I think that everybody got the reality check on, that this is the part that won't go away. I think the multi-vendor, multi-sig thing, collaborative custody, all these kind of like solutions to this are going to change much faster. But the thing that's not going to go away is people are going to 100% remember, do not trust your entropy source. Nobody's going to trust the RNGs on these devices any longer unless they are in some sort of multi-sig that has another device or something else to kind of back it up. But the single sig users, literally, it's going to be dice from here on out. I think that this will not be a thing for anybody who takes self-custody seriously to just RNG from the device and no passphrase, no dice, just trust. I don't think it should be.
I want to, this morning we had a deep dive talking about entropy, and I want to help the audience who maybe doesn't understand what we're talking about with entropy and RNG. I'm going to explain it the way I understand it and then roast me, tell me I'm wrong and correct me. But essentially it's the random generation of the seed that when it was 40 bits, it did not go through enough sort of like iterations of randomly generating the seed. And that's why people are like, you need to roll a dice 100 times to introduce increased randomness in this seed generation.
You're kind of on the mark, but I think there's a better way to put it.
Please.
In Bitcoin, randomness is what secures your money at the end of the day. And your goal is to have a number so random that no computer, no human can ever guess it. And so far that number has been 2 to the 256. That's a very large value. It's massive. And to put this into perspective of how big this number has to be to secure your Bitcoin is 2 to the 256. If you count all the atoms in all the universe, that's all the stars, all the planets, 2 to the 256 is bigger than that. And so like to put it simply, to break a 256-bit seed phrase, you are going to pick an atom in all the universe. Any star, you can pick one little atom in there and you go, that one's mine. And for me to break your seed phrase, I must guess or find that atom. And there are a couple ways I could do this. I could start from atom number 0 if we label them and just each one check. Hey, is there money here? Is there money here? Did I get it? Did I get it? And we keep going through and eventually, not going to even say eventually, there's no humanly possible way to do this. We can't count that high. Computers can't do this right now. And I don't believe it'll ever be possible. But that's how secure Bitcoin is. I would have to guess that. Or it could randomly just fire off like, hey, I'm just going to pick one here, pick one there, etc. And maybe I might get it right. The answer to all that when you have values the size of 2 to the 256 is I'm never going to guess that. There's no way in my lifetime I'm going to be able to pick your little atom in the universe. Now, let's go. How do we get 2 to the 256? Like, what does it actually mean to get to a value like that? Dice, like one of these can carry up to 2.52 bits of entropy in them. So basically every dice roll, I get 2.52 bits. 2.52 is pretty bad as a value because it's essentially 6. So if you use a single dice to roll a seed phrase, somebody would only have to guess 6 atoms or 6 positions. They could go, is 1 correct? Is 2 correct? Is 3 correct? And eventually they'll run through their 6 combinations and they will find your money. That's a terrible seed phrase. So don't use a single dice. But every time you roll that dice, you add another 2.52 bits. So the second time you have 5 bits. Still pretty bad because you can go 1 and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you run through the combinations, and a computer or even a human could do this. And you keep rolling it till you get to 100 times. So 100 dice rolls is 256 bits. That's how you get the 256 bits. What happened with the ColdCard is ideally that random number generator inside should have created an even distribution of values across 2 to the 256. So it should randomly pick an atom out of the universe and go, that one's going to be yours. But their software was implemented incorrectly. And essentially the values were I'm going to make it simple. They were concentrated in a very small area. And so we were just going over 2 to the 256 is the size of the universe in terms of the atoms. How many atoms, what kind of object links to the number of atoms that is in 2 to the 40? It's about the size of a germ cell, like a single germ, a bacteria. So essentially all the computer has to do is basically you take a little bacteria and you go, one of these atoms is a seed phrase. And then you iterate through all of them starting from 0 and you go up and eventually you're going to get a hit because a computer can do this. A computer's fast enough to try all these combinations. And so ultimately that's why 100 dice rolls works, because you keep adding 2.56 bits of entropy until you get 256 bits. And then you get the full range. And the dice, the most important thing as well, is they have an even distribution probability across the surface. The odds of me rolling a 1 is 1 out of 6, a 2, 2 out of 6. So it's not like a dice that would roll a 1 every single time. That would be a terrible way to get entropy. And my final little experiment I did was I was very curious. Let's say I did have dice here and I wanted to roll 100 dice, but have the same crappy seed phrase that was used on a Mark III. How would I get 40 bits of entropy from a dice? How loaded would this thing need to be? And the answer is the dice would have to be so loaded that it would be 95% of the time roll a single side. And the other 5 rolls out of the 100 would be like the other values. But so like to put this into perspective, essentially this dice here would need to to get a seed phrase as bad as what was on the Mark III, the 40 bits. I would basically roll it and it would go 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 95 times. And the last 5 rolls were like these honest rolls. That's how bad the situation was. So welcome to entropy. So, but at the end of the day, the most important thing about entropy is that your source use the full range of entropy. So use all the highest number of bits possible. And that your source of entropy, dice, coins, pieces of paper in a jar, is verifiable. Part of the reason why the ColdCard was so difficult to find, that this was even a problem, is because we as humans, we can't look into the device and see the electrons that are being measured for that randomness. We can't see the code activating which path. There's no observability into it. But when you use something like a dice or a coin, it's a 1. I can see it physically, exactly the randomness. I can watch it happen in real time. That's the most important part.
No, I appreciate the analogy, and you are blowing my mind and leaving me speechless. And as a podcaster, that's kind of a hard thing to do. So you continue to impress me.